Symphony of Sword and Sorcery is a masterpiece romantic action RPG game set within the Royal Academy of the Finale Kingdom. It is a classic tale that revolves around a hero and several heroines embarking on a quest to slay the Demon King. For reasons unknown, the protagonist ends up in the world of this game. Rest Albion has been reincarnated as a villainous noble. He knows with absolute certainty that he is going to die. Only a few days ago, memories of a past life suddenly returned to him. In this world, a sacred ritual is held when children turn 14. During the ceremony, the goddess grants each of them a special skill that will shape their future. When his turn comes, the priest announces his ability, Tame. The reaction is immediate. The surrounding nobles burst into laughter, openly mocking him and calling the skill worthless. The Albion family is famous for producing extraordinary swordsmen, so the result feels like a disgrace. His father explodes in rage. How could a son of the prestigious Albion house receive such a useless ability? His mother quickly urges him to calm down, but he refuses to listen. Blinded by fury, he dismisses Rest as pathetic and unworthy of carrying the Albion name. His brothers look at him with thinly hidden hatred. Amid the humiliation, the priest speaks gently, advising Rest not to fall into despair. He assures him that there must be a reason the goddess granted him that skill. In that moment, everything comes rushing back. He remembers his previous life, playing a game set in this very world, and most horrifying of all, he remembers who he is now. He is Rest Albion, a character destined to become a villain and doomed to die. He understands that if events unfold according to the game's story, he will die midway through the narrative, slain by a high-ranking member of the Demon King's army. No matter which route he chooses, death awaits him. Having experienced every path as a devoted player, he knows this truth well. He steps outside, taking a moment to organize his thoughts. Every twist and turn ultimately leads back to the power Rest possesses. Originally, the Tame skill exists solely to control livestock. In truth, Rest's Tame is unique. It surpasses mere animal control and possesses the ability to dominate monsters. The original Rest discovers this much later, but by then, he has become corrupted and uses this power to harm others. Because of this ability, the Demon Lord's forces set their sights on him. In the end, his power is stripped away, and he meets a grim fate. Even if he struggles desperately to avoid death flags, the outcome remains unchanged. The power dwelling within him inevitably draws the Demon Lord's army toward him, so how can he shatter these ominous death flags? One thing is certain. By using his game knowledge, he will become the ultimate powerhouse. He will grow strong enough to overwhelm any opponent. Only 1 year remains until the story begins, and he faces a mountain of tasks to evade death. Today marks the family's daily schedule report. The twins, Edward and Sidward, announce that today is their monthly training session. Their father, Gad, observes their enthusiasm with satisfaction. Their mother, Jira, chuckles and remarks that they are full of motivation, unlike a certain useless child, clearly referring to Rest. Edward and Sidward continue mocking him relentlessly. Before Rest can respond, his father silences him. Sidward suggests he go for a walk, while Edward sneers that he should try taming a dog. Rest leaves the room. It has been a week since he regained his memories. He has been investigating various aspects of this world and slowly piecing together crucial insights. Unfortunately, he cannot access status values like in the game. However, defeating monsters in this world genuinely enhances one's abilities. The entire leveling system is undeniably real. First and foremost, the only monsters he can summon through Tame are those he has personally defeated. To overcome powerful monsters, he must raise his own status and abilities. One effective method is an event that occurs at the end of each day. In the game, players can select one of 5 training options daily, each enhancing specific parameters. This method allows growth without the need to slay monsters. In this world, there is no requirement to train at midnight, nor is there any daily limit. If he completes special daily training consistently, his growth will be astonishingly fast. Next comes magic reinforcement, yet he questions how he should even use magic. He retains memories of growing up in this world, and perhaps his past life as a gamer gives him an edge. When he attempts mana refinement for the first time since regaining his memories, it proceeds smoothly. His body feels far superior to the one he once had. He assumes he must have trained all these years rigorously, even if he does not remember it clearly. In the game, however, Rest was portrayed as lazy. The despair he felt after receiving Tame must have been crushing. He decides to postpone his nightly prayers until he returns to his room. Just then, Edward and Sidward approach again, ready to mock him. Edward scoffs that this is no time for idling. His own skill is great sword mastery, and he is on his way to sword training. Sidward, who possesses dual-wielding mastery, joins in, sneering that Rest might as well devote himself to raising pigs. Their taunts begin to irritate him. The mood shifts abruptly as the maids straighten at the arrival of their master. She announces that today's training will push them to the brink of death. The twins go pale when she casually mentions she made a slight detour on her way here, to hunt an earth dragon. Rest can only stare in stunned disbelief. This terrifying woman is the one responsible for training his two brothers. At just 18 years old, she holds the title of an S-rank adventurer, Elna Blasio. Since she never appears in the game, this information comes from Rest's memories. He recalls that encountering S-rank adventurers in games is common, yet witnessing one in real life feels overwhelming. He clenches his teeth in frustration, wondering why he cannot receive guidance from someone like her. 2 hours later, the family training grounds echo with heavy breaths. Elna questions the twins about their condition as they collapse in exhaustion and beg her to stop. Rest watches in amazement as his brothers are treated like helpless children. Neither Edward nor Sidward can endure it any longer. Elna concludes the session for the day, prompting them to complain about whether pushing them this far was truly necessary. Rest reflects that if it were merely about parameters, he could raise them through training. However, learning combat skills alone is impossible. Edward and Sidward leave the grounds covered in bruises. Elna expresses disbelief, remarking that with their remarkable skills, they should be exerting far more effort. Rest recalls that she visits the family only once a month. This moment is a golden opportunity, and he refuses to let it slip away. Suddenly, she appears behind him and inquires whether he needs something from her. Startled, he turns around. She remarks that she noticed him observing their training. He apologizes and introduces himself as Rest, the fourth son of the Albion family. She immediately recognizes him as the one who received the Tame skill. He finally voices his request, stating that he wants her to train him. Elna apologizes, explaining that Tame is not a combat-oriented skill, and that she cannot teach him properly. Without the foundation of a swordsman, she doubts he would survive her training. Rest remains persistent and declares his desire to become stronger. With a sigh, Elna relents. She tosses a sword at him and instantly lunges forward, demanding that he prove why she should train him. He barely has time to react before he is struck. She urges him to demonstrate his resolve. Her attacks are heavy and swift, leaving him unable to evade them. Even though she restrains herself, a single slip in his guard would spell the end. Rest refuses to falter and imitates her movements. Elna reacts in surprise but counters effortlessly. He groans in pain, wondering how many minutes have passed. His legs grow numb, and he can no longer summon strength. When the exchange ends, he asks her to evaluate him. She bluntly calls him hopeless, leaving him stunned. She explains that his physical abilities barely meet the minimum requirements and that his swordplay lacks refinement. She questions the reason behind his thirst for power. Does he wish to master the sword, surpass his brothers, or something else entirely? Rest responds that he seeks to overcome his fate. Elna freezes in shock. After a brief pause, she agrees to teach him sword lessons for 30 minutes once she finishes training the twins. He asks if she is serious. She warns him that if she senses even a hint of laziness, she will end the lessons immediately. He bows deeply and expresses his gratitude. She hands him a wooden sword and reminds him that their next meeting will be the following month. Until then, he must refine his skills relentlessly. Before leaving, she corrects his grip and posture. He thanks her sincerely for the guidance. 2 months pass, marking the third session under Elna's instruction. Once again, they engage in sparring. With a confident smirk, she asks what is wrong, pointing out that his movements have grown predictable. She anticipates his next strike. However, he surprises her with a feint. She barely manages to block in time and questions his decision. Attempting to slip behind her instead of launching a direct assault was a mistake. Rest admits that even if he had pursued her directly, it would not have succeeded. However, his skill and technique fill that gap. It is an essential element alongside raw ability, a special move that unleashes power beyond the user's limits. Depending upon Elna's teachings, his days have been consumed by relentless training, and he has mastered one such technique. This technique is Single Swing 1, a sword skill that amplifies both speed and power. He activates his skill flash, catching her off guard. In the next instant, his sword is sent flying, leaving him confused. Elna taps him on the head in response. Rest feels irritated. He has poured his heart into training, yet the gap between them remains vast. Meanwhile, Elna is stunned by his extraordinary growth. He has already reached the level of his brothers, who have trained for 6 months. She realizes how much effort this must have required. She reflects on his final strike. Flash is a skill designed exclusively for those who wield swords. For a non-combatant to master it normally requires a full year. Rest achieved it in just 2 months. He insists they continue sparring, and she agrees without hesitation. As she watches him, Elna wonders if she is nurturing a genuine gem, a talent far beyond anything she ever imagined. Our MC got reincarnated into the very game he was once obsessed with, reborn as a villain character destined to die midway through the story. To avoid that inevitable fate, he needs power. With that resolve, he decides to use his knowledge of the game to become the strongest. Thanks to being guided by an exceptional teacher for the past 3.5 months, he steadily accumulated strength. Up to this point, everything has progressed smoothly. All that remains is avoiding the main characters. His father, Gad, announces that Princess Charlotte will be staying with them. The room falls silent in shock. Rest stiffens, realizing she is one of the main heroines of the game and a walking death flag for him. If he had to describe her in a single word, she is flawless. She is filled with curiosity and treats others kindly, regardless of their status. Despite being blessed with immense talent, she trains tirelessly to protect her people. Because of her nature, she couldn't stand by and watch Rest harm others. In the original story, she eventually joined the main character and confronted a rampaging Rest. At the end of that battle, he is slain by a high-ranking demon. That is how the game is supposed to unfold. However, confusion grips him, as Rest and Charlotte are not meant to meet at this stage. Gad continues, explaining that Lady Elna also trains the royal family. Apparently, the princess heard rumors of a prodigy swordsman residing in their household and wished to meet him personally. The twins are left speechless. Their mother is equally astonished, realizing that if the princess takes a liking to them, joining the royal family would become effortless. Rest struggles to process the revelation that Elna and Charlotte are connected. He understands that the game's scenario has changed because of his involvement with Elna. If that is the case, then the swordsman Charlotte is interested in can only be him. There is no chance she is referring to those two idiots. 2 weeks later, the day of her visit arrives. The moment he has been dreading finally comes, and he has no intention of encountering her this early. He sighs deeply, catching the twins' attention. Annoyed, they order him to leave the castle, claiming he will ruin the hospitality. Rest feels relieved that they are actually being useful for once, and he gladly departs. In the garden, he wonders how to pass the time until Charlotte leaves. For now, he carries only his practice sword. He decides that it is time to hunt monsters. To fully utilize his ability, he needs to defeat monsters and bind them as subordinates. The Arst Forest lies within their territory. Since entry into the forest is forbidden, he knows drawing attention right now would be troublesome. Meanwhile, Charlotte arrives at the estate and is warmly welcomed. She apologizes for the sudden visit. The twins are instantly captivated by her beauty. Gad inquires whether she was blessed with the Holy Sword Princess skill. She confirms that he is correct. Edward reacts in awe, knowing that skill enhances both magic and swordsmanship. Sidward adds that her ability surpasses even that of their brother, the Sword Saint currently studying at the academy. They can hardly believe that someone like her is interested in them. Charlotte politely asks to see their skills. They eagerly agree, and Gad instructs them to escort her to the training grounds. There, the twins clash swords with enthusiasm. A maid turns to Charlotte and asks for her opinion. She calmly responds that it has only been half a month since they received their skills, so their performance is nothing unusual. The twins are stunned by her lack of reaction. They begin to think she is merely a pampered princess who cannot appreciate true strength. Not wanting to lose her interest, Sidward suggests that it would be better to demonstrate their abilities in actual combat. Charlotte looks puzzled as he brings up the Arst Forest. She is shocked that they claim to have the strength to fight real monsters. Sidward assures her that the forest is practically their backyard and that they will keep her safe. The maid watches Charlotte closely. After a moment, Charlotte permits them to proceed. They head toward the forest, which feels eerie even during the daytime, shrouded in unnatural darkness. Sidward confidently assures her that they have her back. Charlotte wonders aloud whether there is another family member around her age, and whether he will be joining them. The twins are left speechless. They exchange glances before fabricating an excuse, claiming that Rest stepped down of his own accord. Charlotte questions what they mean. Sidward explains that the skill Rest received is Tame, adding that she was searching for swordsmen around her age, and Rest does not qualify as one. She considers this explanation reasonable. At that moment, her maid alerts them to the presence of monsters. They turn to see several E-rank gray wolves emerging from the shadows. The twins prepare themselves and rush forward to deal with them. After finishing the fight, both Edward and Sidward are visibly exhausted. Charlotte remarks that they are not as impressive as she initially believed. Her maid, Estelle, advises that it would be better to return. Charlotte looks at her in confusion. Estelle explains that the atmosphere has begun to feel ominous and insists they should retreat. Edward and Sidward attempt to object. Before they can argue further, a massive presence reveals itself. Estelle identifies the creature as a Gale wolf, a C-rank monster. Shock ripples through the group. The wolf launches its attack, and Estelle moves to intercept it, only to be violently thrown aside. She immediately orders the twins to escort Charlotte away while she holds the monster back. Fear grips them, but Estelle urges them to hurry. They begin to flee, only to have their path blocked by another gale wolf. Their shock deepens. Charlotte steels herself and orders them to prepare for battle. The twins tremble, knowing they stand no chance. Edward strikes first, but his blade is easily deflected. The beast counters, sending both brothers crashing to the ground, unconscious. Left alone, Charlotte swallows her fear. She dodges a sweeping attack and forces herself to think. If she can endure a little longer, perhaps Estelle will return. Then a blast of magic hits her. Her eyes widen. The monster can cast spells. Weaponless, she refuses to give up and begins chanting. The creature lunges. She realizes she will not finish the incantation in time. A single thought crosses her mind: this might be the end. At that instant, someone steps between them and intercepts the attack. Charlotte looks up in shock. A young man stands before her. She asks who he is. He calmly responds that he is merely a passerby. A few minutes earlier, Rest notices them heading somewhere unusual. To his shock, they are moving toward the forest. He freezes, unable to believe they are entering the forbidden zone. Although he believes the twins can handle low-ranked monsters, a single mistake could change everything. If Charlotte were to be injured, the entire Albion family would face execution. To be safe, he decides to follow them. His intuition proves correct. Returning to the present, Rest exhales slowly, realizing just how close he came to death. Charlotte asks who he is. He was never meant to meet her this early, yet those two idiots forced his hand. Wanting to keep his identity hidden, he introduces himself as an ordinary passerby. Charlotte frowns, sensing that something does not add up. He tells her that explanations can wait, as the wolf must be dealt with first. She nods in agreement. Rest studies the monster and confirms it is a gale wolf, a C-rank beast capable of manipulating wind magic. Even with his current strength, facing it head-on gives him only a 40% chance of victory. He still has the game knowledge, and that gives him confidence. He tells himself he will survive. The wolf charges. Rest sidesteps with precise timing and studies its movements. Its strikes are fast and leave almost no openings, a deadly balance of offense and defense. But Rest knows its attack patterns. He moves with certainty, landing clean hits one after another. Charlotte watches in stunned silence. His form is not drastically different from hers, yet he strikes without hesitation or wasted motion. Unable to contain herself, she asks who he truly is. Her mind drifts to an earlier conversation. Elna calls an end to their training for the day. She admits she once worried that Charlotte's title as the Holy Sword Princess might make her complacent, but that concern was unnecessary. Charlotte replies that in pure swordsmanship and magic, there are those far more gifted than she is. She refuses to fall behind them. Elna explains that true strength does not always come from powerful skills. Some people lack divine blessings altogether, yet through overwhelming talent and relentless effort, they reach heights equal to Charlotte's. Charlotte notes that Elna has said something similar before. Elna confirms it and reveals that a boy from the Albion family once caught her eye. Charlotte is surprised. It is rare for Elna to speak so highly of anyone. Elna suggests she meet him someday, believing he would be excellent motivation. The memory fades, and everything clicks into place. The person standing before her is Rest. Burdened with a seemingly useless skill, yet undeniably gifted. The boy Elna admired was him all along. The Gale Wolf roars in frustration. Rest taunts it, asking if it has already exhausted its magic. This is his opening. Without warning, the beast shifts targets and lunges at Charlotte. Rest moves instantly, stepping into its path. He activates his skill, Flash, and delivers a decisive strike. Silence falls over the battlefield. Rest exhales slowly. Charlotte stares at him, struggling to comprehend what she has witnessed. But Rest does not relax. For a tamer, this victory means little. The true challenge begins now. Charlotte stares at the fallen monster, unable to believe he defeated it. Rest asks if she is all right. She replies that she is, entirely thanks to him. He freezes in shock and questions how she knows his name. Her gaze shifts to the wooden sword in his hand. She asks whether Elna gave it to him, mentioning that she owns the same one. She introduces herself as the second princess of the Finale Kingdom and explains that they train under the same master. Gratitude fills her voice as she thanks him for protecting her, clearly moved by his courage. Rest responds that he merely did what anyone else would have done. Internally, he admits that risking his life was the last thing he wanted. Charlotte thanks him sincerely. The sincerity in her words stirs something within him. He apologizes briefly and explains that he needs to inspect the wolf. He asks her to look after the twins, and she agrees without hesitation. As Rest approaches the fallen Gale Wolf, he reflects that everything has gone according to plan. Now only one question remains. Will it accept him? A notification appears before his eyes, informing him that the wolf has taken interest in him. The beast acknowledges his strength and expresses its willingness to serve. Relief and excitement wash over him. He kneels and gently pets the wolf, asking it to become the first magical creature he tames. The bond forms successfully, and a surge of power flows into him. He receives a portion of the wolf's strength, gains the new skill Wind Magic, and awakens an ability known as Interdimensional Sanctuary. Power surges through his body, leaving no room for doubt. Rest finally understands why the original Rest believed he could become the strongest. His Tame ability does not merely allow control over monsters, it grants him their power as well. All monsters share enhanced physical abilities, but when a monster possesses a unique skill, he can wield that power too. In the game, Rest was consumed by this strength and met a tragic end. He is different. To overcome his weakness, he subjected himself to relentless training and sought his master's guidance. He refuses to let this victory go to waste. To grow stronger, he must tame more monsters. The more contracts he forms, the more power he gains. With enough strength, he believes he can surpass everyone and stand at the top. Deciding the wolf's full title is too cumbersome, he shortens it to Gale. The wolf responds favorably and Rest smiles, satisfied with the name. For now, he keeps its existence hidden and stores Gale within his interdimensional sanctuary. At that moment, Estelle rushes over and anxiously asks if Charlotte is safe. Charlotte assures her she is unharmed and explains that another Gale wolf appeared, but they managed to drive it away. Estelle stiffens and asks if Charlotte fought it alone. Charlotte shakes her head and says the one who saved her is standing behind her. Estelle turns and notices Rest, questioning who he is. Charlotte introduces him and explains that he protected her. Estelle is stunned, realizing he defeated a Gale wolf faster than she could, and wonders how someone with the Tame skill accomplished such a feat. Charlotte insists she saw it herself. When Estelle looks to Rest for confirmation, he calmly replies that he was fortunate enough to repel the monster and assures her there is no need for concern. She says she cannot properly express her gratitude and promises to thank him once matters settle. Then she pauses, noting that he called her Estelle even though she never introduced herself. Charlotte quickly suggests he must have overheard her name earlier, allowing Rest to avoid suspicion. Estelle thanks him again for saving Charlotte. Rest silently reminds himself to be more careful around characters from the game and suggests they leave the forest. Estelle agrees and asks if Charlotte can walk. The princess replies that she is perfectly fine. The servants rush over in panic, their faces filled with worry as they question what happened. Rest calmly orders them to tend to Charlotte's injuries. His command throws the servants into confusion, and chaos spreads through the hall. Gad arrives moments later and freezes when he sees the battered condition of the twins. He turns sharply toward Rest and demands to know whether he was responsible. Rest replies that he did nothing. Gad warns him that he had better provide an explanation he can accept. Before Rest can speak further, Charlotte steps forward. She firmly states that Rest did nothing wrong and that he saved her life. Estelle asks for permission to explain the situation. Once granted, she reveals that Edward and Sidward led them into the Alst forest, claiming they explored it regularly. Inside, they encountered two C-ranked Gale wolves. Gad pales. Estelle questions whether he truly allows children to enter such a dangerous forest. Gad answers that he never permitted such recklessness and realizes they must have gone without approval. Estelle acknowledges this, but reminds him that responsibility still falls upon him. Gad is left speechless. Charlotte intervenes, assuring him that she followed them of her own will and has no intention of placing blame on him. Gad asks if she truly means it. Charlotte confirms it and adds that Rest single-handedly drove off the Gale wolves and saved her life. Gad stares at Rest in disbelief. Charlotte then states that she needs to rest and politely asks to be shown to her room. A maid escorts her away. Before leaving, Charlotte turns back and tells Rest that she intends to thank him properly. Gad remains frozen, muttering in disbelief that his worthless son defeated a Gale wolf. Rest remains silent. That night, Charlotte stays at the Albion mansion, but sleep evades him. He steps onto the balcony, considering some late-night training, when Charlotte suddenly appears. She comments that meeting him at this hour must be a coincidence and asks if they can talk. He agrees. Bowing deeply, she thanks him again, admitting that if he hadn't arrived when he did, she might have lost her life. Rest urges her to lift her head, telling her that above all, he is relieved she is safe. She calls him kind and suggests that perhaps it is precisely because of who he is that he possesses such strength, praising his swordsmanship. He deflects the credit, noting that she had already weakened the monster before he arrived. She refuses to accept it, and they share a laugh. Charlotte then admits that the incident made her realize how much she still has to learn. She declares that she has made up her mind, and Rest stiffens, sensing the familiarity of the moment. As she speaks, disbelief washes over him. He wonders if she is about to confess. Instead, she asks if he would like to become her sword friend. Rest is stunned. She explains that until now, her goal was to catch up to Elna, who remains far beyond her reach. No matter how hard she tries, she cannot close that gap. Rest, being her age yet already ahead, could help her grow stronger if they train and compete together. That is why she made this decision, and she asks if he will accept. Rest hesitates, wanting to avoid becoming too entangled with the main characters. Seeing the anticipation in her eyes, he exhales softly and agrees. A bright smile spreads across Charlotte's face as she tells him to call her Charo from now on. He protests, saying it feels inappropriate given their difference in status, but she grows irritated, declaring she does not care what others think. Rest remembers her stubbornness and calls her Charo, telling her he looks forward to training together. She smiles warmly and asks him to take good care of her. Charlotte prepares to leave, smiling as she expresses excitement for their future adventures as sword friends. Rest feels the same warmth in his chest. Gad calls it an honor and assures her that they will be awaiting her return. The next morning, she departs the mansion early, beginning her journey back to the capital. Meanwhile, Gad seethes with anger, demanding to know why it has to be Rest of all people. He scolds the twins, asking if they understand what they have done, since the family was on the verge of ruin. Their mother, Jira, attempts to defend them, acknowledging that they put Charlotte in danger, but insisting they only acted under Gad's orders to gain the princess's favor. Gad snaps back, demanding to know how she plans to take responsibility for Charlotte becoming interested in Rest instead. Rest listens, growing increasingly irritated, unable to understand the logic behind their outrage. Edward and Sidward try to convince their father that Rest tricked Charlotte, insisting there is no way he could have defeated a monster like a Gale Wolf. Gad responds that Charlotte witnessed it with her own eyes. The twins quickly claim that they already weakened the beast, and Rest merely delivered the finishing blow. They argue that he took advantage of the confusion and deceived Charlotte. Gad accepts their explanation and mutters that it finally makes sense. Rest's annoyance reaches its limit, and he wonders if they are truly that foolish. Rest remarks that it is true Edward and Sidward attacked the Gale Wolf, but their strikes carried no weight and caused no damage. He finally states that he defeated the wolf himself. Gad immediately scolds him, accusing him of still spouting nonsense. Rest coldly responds that he is telling the truth. Gad stiffens, then orders him to prove it. Rest looks confused. Gad demands that he duel Edward and Sidward at the same time and win. Rest hesitates, but Gad continues, stating that if Rest's claim is true, then it should be easy. The twins eagerly agree. Rest immediately understands what is happening. If Edward and Sidward can fight with their full strength without fear, then they are not weak enough to be overwhelmed by a Gale Wolf. Individually, they are nearly on par with him. However, he cannot defeat both of them at once. That is how things would have been until yesterday. Now, everything has changed. Rest has tamed the wolf and gained new power. That old logic no longer applies. A smirk forms on his face, and fear flickers across the expressions of all three of them. Rest calmly accepts the duel. Both twins are stunned. At that moment, Elna appears, volunteering to serve as a witness. Rest looks confused, and everyone else shares his puzzlement. Gad demands to know why she is here, since she still has time before her next session. She explains that she received word that her students were attacked by a Gale Wolf and managed to repel it. Unable to sit still, she rushed here immediately, hoping she wasn't causing trouble. Gad reassures her that it is fine. Elna adds that upon arriving, she overheard her 3 students were about to duel, and so she wants to act as the witness. Gad looks bewildered, thinking he had only asked her to teach Edward and Sidward. She clarifies that due to his firm request, she also agreed to supervise Rest's training. Gad and the twins freeze in shock. He had never heard of this before. Elna emphasizes that it is purely personal. The time she spends training Rest is nothing compared to what she gives the twins. Above all, she notes that even from her own perspective, she does not believe Rest could win against both of them. As his teacher, she must confirm the source of his confidence. Gad responds that, in that case, he is honored to have her as a witness. Rest remarks that, as Elna says, if it were him a month ago, he would have had no chance. She has watched his growth this whole time and knows he does not flaunt empty confidence. She wants him to prove his words are true and asks if he can. Rest answers with certainty that he can. The twins notice his wooden sword and realize it is true. He is Elna's disciple. Rest wields the wooden sword she gave him, while the twins carry weapons designed for real combat. Gad states that he set the conditions exactly as Rest described in the Galewolf report. Rest claims he will prove it is him. He agrees to the terms without issue. His confidence comes from the new power he gains through taming, though he has no intention of using wind magic yet, keeping the full strength of his tame ability hidden. Besides, his trump card is not limited to wind magic. The duel begins. Sidward charges, declaring he alone is enough. Rest notes his speed but effortlessly evades every strike. Sidward is stunned as his attacks fail to land. Immediately, Edward storms in, claiming he will finish Rest in a single blow. He calls Rest a fool for thinking he can block a greatsword and promises to crush his wooden sword. This is Rest's moment to use his trump card. He activates magic infusion and blocks the strike, leaving Edward speechless. Rest explains that it is an advanced form of mana control. By forcing magic into the tiniest gaps of an object, the technique reinforces durability and amplifies strength. He mocks Edward, pointing out that someone who swings blindly cannot comprehend this. Edward explodes in rage. Rest continues, explaining that magic infusion exists in the game, used by frontline classes, and mastering it requires immense magical power. By training his mana daily, he achieves stable control. Thanks to the boost in magic points gained through taming, he can finally use it in real combat. Edward cannot believe what he is hearing. Rest adds that taming grants him another benefit. By circulating magic through his body, he enhances his physical strength. Combined with taming, he can activate both abilities simultaneously. He overwhelms Edward, forcing him back. Sidward curses, demanding to know why Rest has so much power. Rest smirks and informs them that it is his turn to attack now.
Here I am.